Did you hear what I was playing, Lane?
Oh, I didn't actually think it polite to listen.
I'm sorry for that, for your sake. I don't play accurately. Anyone can play accurately, but I play with wonderful expression. As far as the piano is concerned, sentiment is my forte. I keep science for life.
Naturally.
And speaking of the science of life, have you got the cucumber sandwiches cut for Lord Bracknell?
Of course.
Oh, by the way, Lane, I see from your book that on Thursday night, when Lady Showman and Miss Worthing were dining with me, 8 bottles of champagne are entered as having been consumed.
Yes, that's right. 8 bottles and a pint.
Why is it that at a single lady's establishment, the servants invariably drink the champagne? I ask merely for information.
Well, I attribute it to the superior quality of the wine myself. I've often observed that in married households, the champagne is rarely of a first-rate brand.
Good heavens, is marriage so demoralizing as that?
I believe it is. A very pleasant state for some. I've had very little experience of it myself up to the present. I've only been married once, and that was as a consequence of a misunderstanding between myself and a young man.
I don't know that I'm much interested in your family life, Lane.
No, it's not a very interesting subject. I rarely ever think of it myself.
Very natural, I'm sure. But that will do, Lane. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lane's views on marriage seem somewhat lax. Really, if the lower orders don't set us a good example, what on earth is the use of them? They seem as a class to have absolutely no sense of moral responsibility.
Erniste Worthing is here to see you.
How are you, my dear Erniste? What brings you up to town?
Pleasure, pleasure. What else should bring one anywhere? Eating as usual, I see, Addie.
I believe it is customary in good society to take some slight refreshment before 5 o'clock. Where have you been since last Thursday?
Oh, in the country.
What on earth do you do there?
When one is in town, one amuses oneself, and when one is in the country, one amuses other people. It's excessively boring.
And who are the people you amuse?
Oh, neighbours. Neighbours.
Got nice neighbours in your part of Shropshire?
Perfectly horrid. Never speak to one of them.
Oh, how immensely you must amuse them. By the way, Shropshire, it is your county, is it not?
Shropshire. Oh, yes, of course. Hello. Why all these cups and saucers? Why the cucumber sandwiches? Why such reckless extravagance in one so young? Who's coming to tea?
Oh, merely Uncle August and Wendell.
How perfectly delightful.
Yes, that's all very well, but I'm afraid Uncle August won't quite approve of your being here.
Ask why?
My dear, the way you flirt with Wendell is perfectly disgraceful. It is almost as bad as the way Wendell flirts with you.
I am in love with Wendell. I've come up to town expressly to propose to him.
Oh, I thought you had come up for pleasure. I call that business.
How utterly unromantic you are.
I really don't see anything romantic in proposing. It is very romantic to be in love, but there's nothing romantic about a definite proposal. Why, one might be accepted. One usually is, I believe. Then the excitement is all over. The very essence of romance is uncertainty. If ever I get married, I'll certainly try to forget the fact.
I have no doubt about that, dear Addie. The divorce courts were specially invented for people whose memories are so curiously constituted.
Oh, there's no use in speculating on that subject. Divorces are made in heaven. Please don't touch the cucumber sandwiches. They are ordered specially for Uncle August.
Well, you have been eating them all the time.
That is quite a different matter. He is my uncle. Have some bread and butter. The bread and butter is for Wendell. Wendell is devoted to bread and butter.
And very good bread and butter it is too.
Well, my dear girl, you need not eat as if you're going to eat it all. You behave as if you're married to him already. You are not married to him already, and I don't think you ever will be.
Why on earth do you say that?
Well, in the first place, young men don't marry the ladies they flirt with. Young men don't think it right.
Oh, that's nonsense.
It isn't. It is a great truth. It accounts for the extraordinary number of unmarried ladies one sees all over the place. In the second place, I don't give my consent.
Your consent?
My dear girl, Wendell is my first cousin. And before I allow you to marry him, you will have to clear up the whole question of Cecil.
Cecil? What on earth do you mean? What do you mean, Addie, by Cecil? I don't know anyone of the name of Cecil.
Bring me that cigarette case Miss Worthing left in the smoking room the last time she dined here.
Certainly.
Do you mean to say that you have had my cigarette case all this time? I wish to goodness you had told me. I've been writing frantic letters to Scotland Yard about it. I was very nearly offering a large reward.
Well, I wish you would offer one. I happen to be more than usually hard up.
Well, there's no use offering a large reward now that the thing is found.
I think that is rather mean of you, Erniste, I must say. However, it makes no matter, for now that I look at the inscription inside, I find that the thing isn't yours after all.
Of course it is. You've seen me with it 100 times. And besides, you have no right whatsoever to read what's written inside. It's a very unladylike thing to read inside a private cigarette case.
Oh, it's absurd to have a hard and fast rule about what one should read and what one shouldn't. More than half of modern culture depends on what one shouldn't read.
I am perfectly well aware of the fact, and I don't propose to discuss modern culture. It isn't the sort of thing that one should talk of in private. I simply want my cigarette case back.
Yes, but this isn't your cigarette case. This cigarette case is a present by someone from the name of Cecil. And you have said you do not know anyone of that name.
Well, if you must know, Cecil happens to be my uncle.
Your uncle?
Yes, charming old gentleman he is too. Lives at Tunbridge Wells. Now, just give it back to me.
But why does he call himself Little Cecil if he is your uncle and lives at Tunbridge Wells? From Little Cecil with his fondest love.
My dear, what on earth is there in that? Some uncles are tall, some uncles are not tall. That surely is a matter that an uncle may be allowed to decide for himself. You seem to think that every uncle should be exactly like your uncle. And that's absurd. Now, for heaven's sake, just give me back my cigarette case.
Yes, but why does your uncle call you his aunt? From Little Cecil with his fondest love to his dear Auntie Jackie. There's no objection, I admit, to an uncle being a small uncle. Why an uncle, no matter what his size may be, should call his own niece his aunt, I can't quite make out. Besides, your name isn't Jackie at all. It is Erniste.
It isn't Erniste, it's Jackie.
You've always told me it was Erniste. I've introduced you to everyone as Erniste. You answer to the name of Erniste. You look as if your name was Erniste. You are the most earnest looking person I ever saw in my life. It's perfectly absurd you're saying your name isn't Erniste. It's on your cards. Here's one of them. Miss Erniste Worthing, B4 the Albany. I'll keep this as proof that your name is Erniste if ever you attempt to deny it to me, or to Wendell, or to anyone else.
Well, my name is Erniste in town and Jackie in the country, and the cigarette case was given to me in the country.
Yes, but that doesn't account for the fact that your small Uncle Cecil, who lives at Tunbridge Wells, calls you his dear auntie. Come, old girl, you had much better have the thing out at once.
Oh, my dear Addie, you speak exactly as if you were a dentist. It's very vulgar to talk like a dentist when one isn't a dentist. It produces a false impression.
Well, that is exactly what dentists always do. Now, go on. Tell me the whole thing. I may mention that I have suspected you of being a confirmed and secret Bunburyist, and I'm quite sure of it now.
Bunburyist? What on earth do you mean by Bunburyist?
I'll reveal to you the meaning of that incomparable expression as soon as you are kind enough to reveal to me why you are Erniste in town and Jackie in the country.
Well, produce my cigarette case first.
There it is. Now, produce your explanation and pray, make it improbable.
My dear, there's nothing improbable about my explanation at all. In fact, it's perfectly ordinary. The old Miss Tamsin Cardew, who adopted me when I was a little girl, made me in her will guardian to her grandson, Master Cecil Cardew. Cecil, who lives at my place in the country and refers to me as his auntie out of motives of respect which you could not possibly appreciate, lives at my place in the country under the charge of his admirable tutor, Professor Prism.
Where is this place in the country, by the way?
That is nothing to you, dear. You're not going to be invited. I may candidly tell you it's not in Shropshire.
I suspected that, my dear. I have Bunburyed all over Shropshire on 2 separate occasions. Now, go on. Why are you Erniste in town and Jackie in the country?
My dear, I don't know if you would be able to understand my motives. You are hardly serious enough. When one is placed in the position of guardian, one has to assume a very high moral tone on all subjects. It's one's duty to do so. And since a high moral tone can hardly be said to conduce very much to one's health or one's happiness, I have always pretended to have a younger sister of the name of Erniste in order to get up to town. She lives at the Albany and gets into the most dreadful scrapes. And that, my dear, is the whole truth, pure and simple.
The truth is really pure and never simple. Modern life would be quite tedious if it were either, and modern literature, a complete impossibility.
And that would not be at all a bad thing.
Literary criticism is not your forte, my dear. Don't try it. You should leave that to people who haven't been at a university. They do so well in the daily papers. What you really are is a Bunburyist. I was quite right in saying that you were a Bunburyist. You are one of the most advanced Bunburyists I know.
What on earth do you mean by a Bunburyist?
You have invented a very useful younger sister called Erniste in order that you may be able to come up to town as often as you like. I have invented an invaluable permanent invalid called Bunbury in order that I may be able to go down into the country as often as I choose. Bunbury is perfectly invaluable. If it wasn't for Bunbury's extraordinary bad health, for instance, then I wouldn't be able to dine with you at Willis's tonight. For really, I have been engaged to Uncle August for more than a week.
But I haven't asked you to dine with me anywhere tonight.
I know! You're absurdly careless about sending out invitations. It is very foolish of you. Nothing annoys people so much as not receiving invitations.
I think that you should really dine with your Uncle August tonight.
I haven't the smallest intention of doing anything of the kind. To begin with, I dine there on Monday, and once a week is quite enough to dine with one's own relations. In the second place, whenever I do dine there, I'm either sent down with no man at all, or 2. In the third place, I know perfectly well whom he will place me next to tonight. He will place me next to Martin Farquhar, who always flirts with his own wife across the dinner table. That's not very pleasant. Indeed, that's not even decent. And that sort of thing is enormously on the increase. The amount of men in London who flirt with their own wives is perfectly scandalous. It looks so bad. It is simply washing one's clean linen in public. Besides, now that I know you to be a confirmed Bunburyist, I naturally want to talk to you about Bunburying. I want to tell you the rules.
I'm not a Bunburyist at all. If Wendell accepts me, I'm going to kill my sister. Indeed, I think I'll kill her in any case. Cecil's a little too much interested in her. It's rather a bore. So I'm going to get rid of Erniste, and I strongly advise you to do the same with your invalid friend with the absurd name.
No, nothing will induce me to part with Bunbury. And if you ever get married, which to me seems extremely problematic, you will be very glad to know Bunbury. A woman who marries without knowing Bunbury has a very tedious time of it.
Oh, that's nonsense. If Wendell accepts me, and he is the only young man that I ever would marry, I certainly won't want to know Bunbury.
Then your husband will. You don't seem to realize that in married life, 3 is company and 2 is none.
That, my dear, is the theory that the corrupt French drama has been propounding for the last 50 years.
Yes, and that the happy English home has proved in half the time.
Oh, for goodness sake, don't be cynical. It's easy to be cynical.
My dear, it isn't easy to be anything nowadays. There's such a lot of beastly competition about. Ah, that must be Uncle August. Only relatives or creditors ever ring in that Wagnerian manner. Now, if I could get him out of the way for 10 minutes so that you can have an opportunity for proposing to Wendell, may I dine with you tonight at Willis's?
I suppose so, if you want to.
Oh, yes, but you must mean it. I hate people who are not serious about meals. It is so shallow of them.
Lord Bracknell and Wendell are here.
Good afternoon, dear Adeline. I trust you are behaving well.
I'm feeling very well, Uncle August.
That's not quite the same thing. In fact, the two things rarely go together.
Dear me, Wendell, you are smart.
Oh, well, I'm always smart. Am I not, Miss Worthing?
You are quite perfect, Master Fairfax.
Oh, I hope I'm not that. It would leave no room for developments, and I intend to develop in many directions.
I'm sorry we are a little late, Adeline, but I was forced to call upon Lord Harvey. I have not been there since the death of his poor wife. I've never seen a man so altered. He looks quite 20 years younger now. And now I will have a cup of tea and one of those nice cucumber sandwiches you promised me.
Certainly, Uncle August.
Won't you come and sit here, Wendell?
Thanks, Papa. I'm quite comfortable where I am.
Good heavens! Lane, why are there no cucumber sandwiches? I ordered them specially.
There were no cucumbers in the market at all this morning. I went down twice.
No cucumbers?
None at all. Not even for ready money.
That would do, Lane. Thank you.
Thank you.
I am greatly distressed, Uncle August, about there being no cucumbers. Not even for ready money.
It really makes no matter, Adeline. I had some crumpets with Lord Harvey, who seems to me to be entirely living for pleasure now.
I hear his hair has turned quite black from grief.
It has changed colour. From what cause, of course, I cannot say. Thank you. I have a real treat for you tonight, Adeline. I'm going to send you down with Martin Farquhar. He's such a nice man and so attentive to his wife. It is delightful to watch them.
I'm afraid, Uncle August, I shall have to give up the pleasure of dining with you tonight after all.
I hope not, Adeline. It would put my table completely out. Your aunt will be forced to dine at home. Fortunately, she is accustomed to that.
It is a great bore, and I need hardly say a terrible disappointment to me. But the fact is, I have just had a telegram to say that my poor friend Bunbury is very ill again. They seem to think I should be with her.
It is strange. This Miss Bunbury seems to suffer from curiously bad health.
Poor Bunbury is a dreadful invalid.
Well, Adeline, I feel that it is high time that this Miss Bunbury made up her mind as to whether or not she was going to live or die. This shilly-shallying with the matter is quite absurd. Nor do I in any way approve the modern sympathy of invalids. I consider it wrong. Illness of any kind is not something to be encouraged in others. Health is the primary duty of life. I'm always telling your aunt this, though she never really seems to take much notice, as far as any risks of her soldiering are concerned. I would be very much obliged if you were to inform Miss Bunbury from me not to have a relapse on Saturday, for I rely on you to arrange my music for me. It is my last reception, and one wants something that will encourage conversation, particularly at the end of the season when everyone has said everything they had to say, which in most cases is probably not much.
I'll speak to Bunbury, Uncle August, if she's still conscious, and I think I can promise she'll be all right by Saturday. Of course, music is a great difficulty. You see, if one plays good music, nobody listens, and if one plays bad music, no, people don't talk. But I'll run over the program I've drawn out, if you will kindly come into the next room for a moment.
Thank you. Thank you, Adeline. That is very thoughtful of you. I'm sure that your program will be delightful. After a few expurgations, French music I could not possibly allow. People seem to think that they are improper, and they look shocked, which is vulgar, or they laugh, which is worse. Oh, but German. Oh, German is a thoroughly respectable language, as indeed I believe it is. Wendell, you will accompany me?
Certainly, Papa.
A charming day it has been, Master Fairfax.
Pray, don't talk to me about the weather, Miss Worthing. Whenever someone talks to me about the weather, I'm always quite certain that they mean something else, and that makes me so nervous.
But I do mean something else.
I thought so. In fact, I'm never wrong.
And I would like to be allowed to take advantage of Lord Bracknell's temporary absence.
I would certainly advise that you do so. Papa has a way of coming back suddenly into a room I've often had to speak to him about.
Wendell, ever since I met you, I have admired you more than any other man I've ever met since I've met you.
Yes, I am quite aware of the fact. And I often wish that, in public at any rate, you had been more demonstrative. For me, you have always had an irresistible fascination. Even before I met you, I was far from indifferent to you. We live, as I hope you know, Miss Worthing, in an age of ideals. The fact is constantly mentioned in the more expensive monthly magazines and has reached the provincial pulpits, I'm told. And it has always been my ideal to love someone of the name of Erniste. Oh, there is something in that name that inspires absolute confidence. The moment Addie mentioned to me that she had a friend named Erniste, I knew I was destined to love you.
You really love me, Wendell?
Passionately.
Oh, darling, you don't know how happy you've made me.
Oh, my own Erniste.
But you don't really mean to say that you couldn't love me if my name wasn't Erniste.
But your name is Erniste.
Yes, I know it is, but supposing it was something else. Do you mean to say that you couldn't love me then?
Oh, but that is merely metaphysical speculation. And like most metaphysical speculation, has no reference at all to the actual facts of life as we know them.
Personally, darling, to speak quite candidly, I don't much care for the name of Erniste. I don't think it suits me at all.
Oh, no. It suits you perfectly. It is a divine name. It has music of its own. It produces vibrations.
Oh, well, really, Wendell, I must say that I think that there are lots of other much nicer names. I think Jackie, for instance, a charming name.
Jackie? Oh, no, there is very little music in the name Jackie, if any at all, indeed. No, it does not thrill. It produces absolutely no vibrations. I have known several Jackies, and they have all, without exception, turned out to be more than usually plain. Besides, Jackie is a notorious domesticity for Jacqueline, and I pity any man who's married to a woman named Jacqueline. He'd probably never be allowed to know the single moment's pleasure of solitude. No. The only really safe name is Erniste.
Wendell, I must get christened. We must get married at once. There is no time to be lost.
Married, Miss Worthing?
Well, surely you know that I love you, and you led me to believe, Wendell, that you're not entirely indifferent to me.
Well, I adore you, but I haven't proposed to you yet. There's been no discussion at all about marriage. The subject hasn't even been touched on.
Well, may I propose to you now?
I think it would be an admirable opportunity. And to save you any possible embarrassment, Miss Worthing, I think it quite right to tell you beforehand that I fully intend to accept.
Wendell!
Yes, Miss Worthing? What have you got to say to me?
You know what I've got to say to you.
Yes, but you don't say it.
Wendell, will you marry me?
Of course I will, darling. How long you have been about it? Oh, you obviously don't have much experience in how to propose.
My own one, I have never loved anyone but you.
Well, yes, but girls often propose for practice. I know my sister Geraldine does. All my friends tell me so. What wonderful blue eyes you have, Erniste. They are quite blue. Oh, I hope you'll always look at me like that, especially when there are other people present.
Miss Worthing, rise, madam, from that semi-recumbent posture. It is most indecorous.
Papa, I must beg you to retire. This is no place for you. Besides, Miss Worthing and I have not quite finished yet.
Finished what, may I ask?
I am engaged to be married to Miss Worthing, Papa.
Pardon me, but you are not engaged to be married to anyone. When you do become engaged to someone, either myself or your mother, should her duties permit her, will inform you of that fact. An engagement should come upon a young man as a surprise. It is pleasant or unpleasant, as the case may be. It is hardly a matter that he could be allowed to choose it for himself. And now, I have a few questions to put to you, Ms. Worthing. While I make these inquiries, you, Wendell, will wait for me below in the carriage.
Papa?
To the carriage, Wendell!
Yes, Papa.
You may take a seat, Ms. Worthing.
Thank you, Lord Bracknell. I prefer standing.
Now, I feel bound to tell you that you are not down on my list of eligible young ladies. I have the same list as the Duke of Bolton. In fact, we work together. However, I am quite ready to enter your name, should your answers prove to be what a truly affectionate father requires. Do you smoke?
Well, yes, I must admit I smoke.
I'm glad to hear it. A woman should always have an occupation of some kind. There are far too many idle girls in London. How old are you?
I'm 29.
A very good age to be married at. I have always been of the opinion that any woman that desires to get married should know either everything or nothing. Which do you know?
I know nothing, Lord Bracknell.
I am very glad to hear it. I do not approve of anything that tampers with natural ignorance. Ignorance is like a delicate exotic fruit. Touch it, and the bloom is gone. The whole theory of modern education is radically unsound. Fortunately, in England at any rate, education produces no effects whatsoever. If it did, it would prove a serious danger to the upper classes and would probably lead to acts of violence in Grosvenor Square. What is your income?
Between 700,000 and 800,000 a year.
In land or in investments?
In investments, chiefly.
That answer is satisfactory. What with the duties expected of one during one's lifetime and the duties expected of one after one's death, land ceases to be either a profit or a pleasure. It gives one position and prevents one from keeping it up. That's all that can be said about land.
I own a country house with some land, of course, attached to it, about 1,500 acres, I believe. But I don't depend on that for my real income. In fact, as far as I can make out, the poachers are the only people who make anything out of it.
A country house? How many bedrooms? Well, that matter can be cleared up later. You have a townhouse, I hope? I hope you know that a young man such as Wendell, who has a simple and a spoilt nature, could hardly be expected to reside in the country.
I own a house in Belgrave Square, but it is let by the year to Lord Bloxham. Of course, I can get it back whenever I like, at 6 months' notice.
Lord Bloxham. I don't know him.
Oh, he goes about very little. He is a gentleman considerably advanced in years.
Ah, nowadays that is no guarantee of respectability of character. What number in Belgrave Square?
149.
The unfashionable side. I always thought there was something. However, that can easily be altered.
Do you mean the fashion or the side?
Both, I should feel, if necessary. What are your politics?
I'm afraid I really have none. I am a Liberal Democrat.
Oh, they count as Tories. They often come to dine with us, or have been seen out in the evening, at any rate. Now, On to minor matters. Are your parents living?
I have lost my parents.
To lose one parent, Miss Worthing, may be regarded as misfortunate, but to lose both almost looks like carelessness. Who was your father? He was evidently a man of some wealth. Was he born into what the heretical papers call the purple of commerce? Or did he rise through the ranks of the aristocracy?
I'm afraid I really don't know. The fact is, Lord Bracknell, I said I had lost my parents. It would be near the truth to say that my parents seem to have lost me. I don't actually know who I am by birth. I was found.
Found?
Yes, the late Miss Tamsin Cardew, an old lady of very kind and charitable disposition, found me and gave me the name of Worthing because she happened to have a first-class ticket to Worthing in her pocket at the time. Worthing is a place in Sussex. It is a seaside resort.
Where did this charitable lady with a first-class ticket to a seaside resort find you?
In a handbag.
A handbag?
Yes, I was found in a handbag, a somewhat large black leather handbag with handles to it, a rather ordinary handbag, in fact.
In what locality did this Miss Jane or Tamsin Cardew come across this ordinary handbag?
In the cloakroom in Victoria Station. It was given to her in mistake for her own.
The cloakroom of Victoria Station?
Yes, the Brighton line.
The line is immaterial, Miss Worthing. I confess, I'm somewhat bewildered by what you just told me. To be born, or at any rate bred, in a handbag, whether it has handles or not, might seem to display some contempt for the ordinary decencies of family life that remind one of the worst excesses of the French Revolution. And I assume you know what that unfortunate movement led to. As to the particular locality, a cloakroom in a railway station might seem to disclose some form of social discretion, which has probably been used up until now, but it could hardly be regarded as the basis for a good position in high society.
Well, may I ask then what you would advise me to do? I need hardly say I would do anything in the world to ensure Wendell's happiness.
I would strongly advise you, Miss Worthing, to acquire some relations as soon as possible, and to make a definite effort to produce one of either parent before the season is quite out.
Well, I don't see how I could possibly manage to do that. I can produce the handbag at any moment. It's in my dressing room at home. I really think this should satisfy you, Lord Bracknell.
Me, madam? What's this got to do with me? You can hardly expect to believe that either myself or Lady Bracknell would allow our only son, a young man brought up with the utmost care, to marry into a cloakroom and form an alliance with a parcel? Good morning, Miss Worthing.
Good morning. Oh, for heaven's sake, Addie, don't play that ghastly tune. How idiotic you are.
Didn't it go off all right, old girl? You don't mean to say Wendell has refused you? Oh, I know it is a way he has. He's always refusing people. I think it is most ill-natured of him.
Oh, Wendell is as right as a trivet. As far as he is concerned, we are engaged. His father is an absolute horror. Never met such a gorgon. Don't really know what a gorgon is like, but I'm sure Lord Bracknell is one. In any case, he is a monster, without being a myth. Which is a bit unfair, I beg your pardon. I suppose I shouldn't talk about your own uncle in that way before you.
My dear, I love hearing my relations abused. It's the only thing that makes me want to put up with them at all. Relations are simply a tedious pack of people who haven't got the remotest knowledge of how to live, nor the smallest instinct of when to die.
Oh, that's nonsense. But I won't argue about it, because you always want to argue about things.
Well, that is what things were originally made for.
But Upon my word, if I believed that, I would shoot myself. You don't think there's any chance of Wendell becoming like his father in about 150 years or so, do you?
All men become like their fathers. That's their tragedy. No woman does. That's hers.
Is that clever?
It's perfectly phrased, and quite as true as any observation in civilized life should be.
I am sick to death of cleverness. Everyone is clever these days. You can't go anywhere without meeting clever people. The thing has become an absolute public nuisance. I wish to goodness we had a few fools left.
We have.
Oh, I should extremely like to meet them. What do they talk about?
The fools? What about the clever people, of course?
Oh, what fools.
By the way, have you told Wendell the truth about your being Erniste in town and Jackie in the country?
My dear, that isn't the sort of thing that one tells to a nice, sweet, refined young man like Wendell. What extraordinary ideas you have about the way to behave to a man.
The only way to behave to a man is to make love to him if he's handsome, or to someone else if he's plain.
Oh, that's nonsense.
What about your sister? What about the profligate Erniste?
Oh, by the end of the week, I shall have got rid of Erniste. I'll say she died, suddenly, in Paris of apoplexy. Lots of people die quite suddenly of apoplexy, don't they?
Yes, but it's hereditary, my dear. It's the sort of thing that runs in families. You had much better say a severe chill.
And you're sure a severe chill is not hereditary or anything of that kind?
Of course it isn't.
Very well then. My poor sister Erniste got carried off quite suddenly in Paris by a severe chill. That gets rid of her.
But I thought you said that Cecil was a little too much interested in her. Won't he feel her loss a good deal?
No, that's all right. Cecil isn't a silly romantic boy. He's got a capital appetite, goes on long walks, and pays absolutely no attention to his lessons.
I would rather like to see Cecil.
I will take very good care you never do. He's excessively handsome and only just 18.
Have you told Wendell yet you have an excessively handsome ward who is only just 18?
This isn't the sort of thing that one just blurts out to people. And Cecil and Wendell are set to be extremely good friends. I will bet you anything you like that half an hour after they have met, they will be calling each other brother.
Men only do that when they have called each other a lot of other things first. Now, my dear, if you want to get a good table at Willis's, we really must go and dress. Do you know that it is nearly 7?
Oh, it's always nearly 7.
Well, I'm hungry.
I never knew you when you weren't.
What shall we do after dinner? Go to a theatre?
Oh no, I loathe listening.
Well, let us go to a club.
Oh no, I hate talking.
Well, we might trot round to the Empire at 10.
Oh no, I couldn't bear looking at things. It's so silly.
Well, what shall we do?
Nothing.
It is awfully hard work doing nothing. However, I don't mind hard work where there's no definite object of any kind.
Wendell is back.
Wendell, upon my word.
Addie, kindly turn your back. I have something very important I need to discuss with Miss Worthing.
Well, really, I don't think I can allow this at all.
Addie, you always adopt a strictly immoral attitude towards life. You're not quite old enough to do that yet.
My own darling.
Erniste, we may never be married. From the expression on Papa's face, I fear that we never shall. Few parents nowadays pay any regard to what their children say to them. The old-fashioned respect for the young is fast dying out. Whatever influence I ever held over Papa, I lost at the age of 3. And although he may prevent us from becoming man and wife, and I may marry someone else, and marry often, nothing he can do can possibly alter my eternal devotion to you.
Dear Wendell.
The story of your romantic origin, as related to me by Papa with unpleasing comments, has naturally stirred the very fibres of my nature. Your Christian name has an irresistible fascination. The simplicity of your character renders you utterly incomprehensible to me. Your town address at the Albany I have. What is your address in the country?
The Manor House, Woolton, Hertfordshire.
There is a good postal service, I suppose. It may be required. This will, of course, consideration. I will communicate with you daily.
My own one.
How long are you in town?
Till Monday.
Good. Addie, you may turn round now.
Thanks. I've turned around already.
You may also ring the bell.
You will allow me to see you to your carriage, my own darling.
Certainly.
I will see Master Fairfax out.
As you wish.
A glass of sherry, Lane.
Why ever not?
Tomorrow, Lane, I am going Bunburying.
Really? Again?
I shall probably not be back till Monday. You may put up my dress clothes, my smoking jackets, and all the Bunbury suits.
It shall be done.
I hope it shall be a fine day tomorrow, Lane.
It never is.
Lane, you're a perfect pessimist.
I do my best to always give satisfaction.
There goes a sensible, intellectual young man. The only young man I ever saw in my entire life that I ever would marry. What are you so amused at, Addie?
I'm just a little anxious about poor Bunbury, that is all.
If you're not careful, your friend Bunbury is going to get you into a serious scrape someday.
I love scrapes. They are the only things which are never serious.
Oh, that's nonsense. You never talk anything but nonsense, Addie.
No one ever does.
Cecil? Cecil! Surely such a utilitarian occupation as the watering of flowers is rather Moulton's duty than yours, especially at a moment when intellectual pleasures await you. Your German grammar is on the table. Pray open it at page 15. We will repeat yesterday's lesson.
But I don't like German. It isn't at all a becoming language. I know perfectly well that I look quite plain after my German lesson.
Dear boy, you know how anxious your guardian is that you improve yourself in every way. She laid particular stress on your German before leaving for town yesterday. Indeed, she always lays stress on your German before leaving for town.
The Auntie Jackie is so very serious. Sometimes she is so serious that I think she cannot be quite well.
Your guardian enjoys the best of health, and her gravity of demeanour is particularly to be commended in someone so comparatively young as she is. I know no one with a higher sense of duty and responsibility.
I suppose that is why she often looks a little bored when we three are together.
Cecil, I'm surprised at you. Miss Worthing has many troubles in her life. Idle merriment and triviality would be out of place in her conversation. You must remember her constant anxiety about that unfortunate young woman, her sister.
I wish she would allow that unfortunate young woman, her sister, to come down here sometimes. We might have a good influence over her, Professor Prism. I'm sure you certainly would. You know, German and geology and things of that kind influence a woman very much.
I don't think that even I could have produced any effect on a character who, by her own sister's admission, is irretrievably weak and vacillating. Indeed, I do not think I should desire to reclaim her. I do not hold for this modern mania of turning bad people into good people at a moment's notice. As a woman sows, so let her reap. But you must put your diary away, Cecil. I do not see why you need to keep a diary at all.
I keep a diary in order to enter the wonderful secrets of my life. If I didn't write them down, I should probably forget all about them.
Memory, dear Cecil, is the diary we all carry around with us.
Yes, but it usually chronicles the things that have never happened and couldn't possibly have happened. I believe memory is responsible for nearly all 3-volume novels that Moody sends us.
Do not speak slightingly of the 3-volume novel, Cecil. I wrote one myself in earlier days.
Did you really, Professor Prism? How wonderfully clever you are. I hope it did not end happily. I don't like novels that end happily. They depress me so much.
The good ended happily and the bad unhappily. That is what fiction means.
I suppose so. But it seems very unfair. And was your novel ever published?
Alas, no. The manuscript, unfortunately, was abandoned. I use the word in the sense of lost or mislaid. But these speculations are profitless. Back to your work, boy.
But I see the Dr. Chasuble coming up through the garden.
Ah, Dr. Chasuble, this is indeed a pleasure.
And how are we this morning, Professor Prism? You are, I trust, well?
Professor Prism has just been complaining of a slight headache. I think it would do him so much good to have a short stroll in the park with you, Dr. Chasuble.
Cecil, I have not mentioned anything about a headache.
No, I know that, dear Professor Prism, but I felt instinctively that you had a headache. Indeed, I was thinking about that and not about my German lesson when the rector came in.
I hope, Cecil, you're not inattentive.
Oh, I'm afraid I am.
That is strange. Were I fortunate enough to be Professor Prism's pupil, I would hang upon his lips. Oh, I spoke metaphorically. My metaphor was drawn from bees. Miss Worthing, I suppose, has not returned from town yet?
Oh, we do not expect her until Monday afternoon.
Yes, she usually likes to spend her Sunday in London. She's not one of those whose sole aim is enjoyment, as by all accounts that unfortunate young woman her sister seems to be. But I must not disturb Aristotle and his pupil any longer.
Aristotle? My name is Felix, Doctor.
Oh, a classical allusion merely, drawn from pagan authors. I shall see you both, no doubt, at evensong.
I think I shall take a stroll with you, dear Doctor. I find I have a headache after all, and a walk might do it good.
With pleasure, Professor Prism, with pleasure. We might go as far as the schools and back.
Oh, that would be delightful. Cecil, you will read your political economy in my absence. The chapter on the fall of the rupee you may omit. It is somewhat too sensational. Even these metallic problems have their melodramatic side.
Horrid political economy, horrid geography, horrid German.
Miss Erniste Worthing has just driven over from the station. She has brought her luggage with her.
Miss Erniste Worthing, B4, the Albany West. Auntie Jackie's sister. Did you tell her Miss Worthing was in town?
Yes, sir. She seemed very much disappointed. I mentioned that you and Professor Prism were in the garden. She said she was anxious to speak to you privately for a moment.
Ask Miss Erniste Worthing to come out here. I suppose you had better talk to the housekeeper about a room for her. I've never met any really wicked person before. I feel rather frightened. I am so afraid she'll look just like everyone else. She does.
You are my little cousin Cecil, I'm sure.
You are under some strange mistake. I am not little. In fact, I believe I am more than usually tall for my age. But I am your cousin Cecil. You, I see from your card, are Auntie Jackie's sister, my cousin Erniste. My wicked cousin Erniste.
Oh, I'm not really wicked at all, cousin Cecil. You mustn't think that I'm wicked.
If you are not, then you have certainly been deceiving us all in a very inexcusable manner. I hope you have not been leading a double life, pretending to be bad and being good all the time. That would be hypocrisy.
Oh, of course I've been rather reckless.
I'm glad to hear it.
Now that you mention the subject, I've been very bad in my own small way.
I don't think you should be so proud of that, though I'm sure it must have been very pleasant.
It is much pleasanter being here with you.
I I don't understand how you're here at all. Auntie Jackie won't be back till Monday afternoon.
That is a great disappointment. I am obliged to go up by the first train on Monday morning. I have a business appointment that I'm anxious to miss.
But couldn't you miss it anywhere but in London?
No, the appointment is in London.
Well, I know, of course, how important it is not to keep a business engagement when one wants to retain any sense of the beauty of life. But still, I think you had better wait till Auntie Jackie arrives. I know she wanted to speak to you about your emigrating.
About my what?
You're emigrating. She has gone up to buy your outfit.
Well, I certainly wouldn't let Jackie buy my outfit. She has no taste in heels at all.
Oh, I don't think you will require heels. Auntie Jackie is sending you to Australia.
Australia? I'd sooner die.
Well, she said on Wednesday at dinner that you would have to choose between this world, the next world, and Australia.
Oh, well, the accounts I've received of Australia and the next world are not particularly encouraging. This world is good enough for me, cousin Cecil.
Yes, but are you good enough for it?
I am afraid I am not that. That is why I want you to reform me. You might make that your mission, if you don't mind, cousin Cecil.
I'm afraid I have no time this afternoon.
Well, would you mind me reforming myself this afternoon?
It is rather quixotic of you, but I think you should try.
I will. I feel better already.
You look a little worse.
That is because I am hungry.
Oh, how thoughtless of me. I should have remembered that when one wants to lead an entirely new life, one requires regular and wholesome meals. Won't you come in?
Thank you. Might I have a flower first? I never have any appetite unless I have a flower first.
A Marie-Chaniel?
No, I'd sooner have a pink rose.
Why?
Because you are like a pink rose, cousin Cecil.
I don't think it can be right for you to talk to me like that. Professor Prism never says such things to me.
Then Professor Prism is a short-sighted old man. You are the prettiest young man I ever saw.
Professor Prism says that all good looks are a snare.
They are a snare that every sensible woman would like to be caught in.
Oh, I don't think I would care to catch a sensible woman. I should know what to talk to her about.
You are too much alone, dear Dr. Chasuble. You should get married. A misanthrope I can understand. A manthrope, never.
Believe me, I do not deserve so neologistic a phrase. The precept as well as the practice of the primitive church was distinctly against matrimony.
Well, that is obviously the reason why the primitive church has not lasted until the present day. And you do not seem to realize, dear doctor, that by converting themselves into a permanent public temptation, a woman is a temptation for a man. It is this very celibacy that leaves weaker vessels astray.
But is a woman not equally attractive when married?
No married woman is ever attractive, except to her husband.
And often I've been told, not even to him.
Well, that depends on the intellectual sympathies of the man. Maturity can be relied upon. Ripeness can be trusted. Young men are green. I spoke horticulturally. My metaphor was drawn from fruits. But where is Cecil?
Perhaps he followed us to the schools?
Miss Worthing?
Miss Worthing?
This is indeed a surprise. We did not look for you until Monday afternoon.
I have returned sooner than I expected. Dr. Chasuble, you are well, I hope?
Oh, dear Miss Worthing, I trust this garb of woe does not betoken some terrible calamity.
My sister.
More shameful debts and extravagance?
Still leading her life of pleasure.
Dead.
Your sister Erniste dead?
Quite dead.
What a lesson for her. I trust she will profit by it.
Miss Worthing, I offer you my sincere condolence. You have at least the consolation of knowing that you were always the most generous and forgiving of sisters.
My poor sister Erniste. She had many faults, but it is indeed a sad, sad blow.
Very sad indeed. Were you with her at the end?
Oh no, she died abroad, in Paris. I received a telegram last night from the manager of the Grand Hotel.
Was the cause of death mentioned?
A severe chill, it seems.
As a woman sows, so shall she reap.
Charity, dear Professor Prism, charity. None of us are perfect. I myself am peculiarly susceptible to drafts. Will the interment take place here?
Oh no, she seems to have expressed a desire to be buried in Paris.
In Paris? Oh, I fear that hardly points to any very serious state of mind at the last. You would no doubt wish me to make some slight allusion to this tragic domestic affliction next Sunday. My sermon on the meaning of the manna in the wilderness can be adapted to almost any occasion, joyful or, as in the present case, distressing. I have preached it at harvest celebrations, christenings, confirmations, on days of humiliation and festal days. The last time I delivered it was in the cathedral as a charity sermon on behalf of the Society for the Prevention of Discontent among the upper orders. The bishop who was present was much struck by some of the analogies I drew.
Oh, that reminds me, Dr. Chatterfield, you mentioned christenings, I believe. You know how to christen all right, don't you? I mean, of course, you are constantly christening, are you not?
It is, I regret to say, one of the rector's most constant duties in this parish. I have often spoken to the poorer classes on the subject, but they don't seem to know what thrift is.
But is there any particular infant into whom you're interested, Miss Worthing? Your sister was, I believe, unmarried, was she not?
Oh, yes.
People who live entirely for pleasure usually are.
No, it is not for any child, dear doctor. I am very fond of children. No, the fact is that I would like to be christened myself. This afternoon, in fact, if you have nothing better to do.
But surely, Miss Worthing, you have been christened already.
Oh, but I don't remember anything about it.
But have you any grave doubts on the subject?
I certainly intend to have. Of course, I don't know if the thing would bother you in any way, or if perhaps you think I'm a little too old now?
Not at all. The sprinkling and indeed the immersion of adults is a perfectly canonical practice.
Immersion?
You need have no apprehensions. Sprinkling is all that is necessary, or indeed, I think, advisable. Whether it's so changeable. At what hour would you wish your ceremony performed?
Oh, I thought I'd trot around at about 5, if that would suit you.
Perfectly, perfectly. In fact, I have 2 similar ceremonies to perform at that time. A case of twins that occurred recently in one of the outlying cottages on your own estate. Poor Jenkins, Mr. Carter, a most hard-working man.
Oh no, I don't see much fun in being christened along with other babies. That would be so childish. Would 5:30 do?
Admirably, admirably. And now, dear Miss Worthing, I will not intrude any longer into a house of sorrow. I would merely beg you not to be too much bowed down by grief. What seems to us bitter trials are often blessings in disguise.
This seems to me a blessing of an extremely obvious kind.
Auntie Jackie! I'm pleased to see you back. But what horrid clothes have you got on? Do go and change them.
Cecil?
My child, my child.
What's the matter, Auntie Jackie? You look happy. You look as if you had a toothache, and I've got such a surprise for you. Who do you think is in the dining room? Your sister.
Who?
Your sister Erniste. She arrived about half an hour ago.
What nonsense. I haven't got a sister.
Oh, Auntie Jackie, don't say that. However badly she may have behaved to you in the past, she is still your sister. You couldn't be so heartless as to disown her. I'll tell her to come out and you'll kiss her, won't you?
Oh, these are very joyful tidings.
After we'd been resigned to her loss, her sudden return seems to me peculiarly distressing.
My sister in the dining room? I don't know what it all means. I think it's perfectly absurd. Good heavens!
Sister Jacqueline, I have come down from town to tell you that I'm sorry for all the trouble I have given you, and I intend to lead a better life in the future.
Auntie Jackie, you're not going to refuse to kiss your own sister's cheek.
Nothing will induce me to kiss her cheek. I think her coming down here disgraceful, and she knows perfectly well why.
Auntie Jackie, do be nice. There is some good in everyone. Erniste has just been telling me about a poor invalid friend, Miss Bunbury, whom she goes to visit so often. And surely there must be some good in one who is kind to an invalid and leaves the pleasures of London to sit by a bed of pain.
Oh, she's been telling you about Bunbury, has she?
Yes, she's told me all about poor Miss Bunbury and her terrible state of health.
Bunbury. Well, I won't have her talking to you about Bunbury or about anything else. It's enough to drive one perfectly frantic.
Of course, I admit that the faults were all on my side, but I must say that I find Sister Jacqueline's coldness to me peculiarly painful. I expected a more enthusiastic welcome, especially considering it is the first time I have come here.
Auntie Jackie, if you don't kiss Erniste, I will never forgive you.
Never forgive me?
Never, never, never.
Well, this is the last time I shall ever do anything of the kind.
It's pleasant, is it not, to see such perfect a reconciliation. I think we might leave the two sisters together.
Cecil, you will come with us.
Certainly, Professor Prism. My little task of reconciliation is over.
You have done a beautiful action today, my dear boy.
We must not be premature in our judgments.
I feel very happy.
You young Jezebel, Addie. You've got to get out of this place as soon as possible. I don't allow any Bunburying here.
I have put Miss Annie's things in the room next to yours, madam. I suppose that is all right.
What?
Miss Annie's luggage, madam. I have unpacked it and put it in the room next to your own.
Her luggage?
Yes, madam. 3 portmanteaus, a dressing case, 2 hat boxes, and a large luncheon basket.
I'm afraid I can't stay for more than a week. This time.
Mary, order a taxi at once. Erniste has suddenly been called back to town.
Yes, madam.
What a fearful liar you are, Jackie. I have not been called back to town at all.
Yes, you have.
I haven't heard anyone call me.
Your duty as an influencer calls you.
My duty as an influencer has never interfered with my pleasures in the smallest degree.
I can quite understand that.
Well, Cecil is a darling.
You are not to talk of Cecil like that. I don't like it.
Well, I don't like your clothes. You look perfectly ridiculous in them. Why on earth don't you go up and change? It is perfectly childish to be in deep mourning for a woman who is actually staying with you for a whole week in your house as a guest. I call it grotesque.
You are certainly not staying with me in my house for a whole week as a guest or as anything else. You have got to leave by the 4:05 train.
Well, I certainly won't leave you so long as you're in mourning. It would be most unfriendly. If I were in mourning, you would stay with me, I suppose. I should think it very unkind if you didn't.
Well, will you go if I change my clothes?
Yes, if you're not too long. I never saw anyone take so long to dress, and with such little result.
Well, in any case, that's better than always being overdressed as you are.
If I am occasionally a little overdressed, I always make up for it by being overeducated.
Your vanity is ridiculous. Your conduct an outrage, and your presence in my garden a complete outrage. But you have got to go back by the 4:05 train, and I hope you will have a pleasant journey back to town. This Bunburying, as you call it, has not been a great success for you.
I think it has been a great success. I'm in love with Cecil, and that is everything. But I must see him before I go and make arrangements for another Bunbury. There he is.
Oh, I merely came back to water the flowers. I thought you were with Auntie Jackie.
She's going to order the car for me.
Oh, is she taking you for a nice drive?
She's going to send me away.
And have we got to part?
I am afraid so. It is a very painful parting.
It is always painful to part from people whom one have known for a very brief space of time. The absence of old friends one can endure with equanimity, but even a momentary separation from anyone to whom one has just been introduced is almost unbearable.
Thank you.
The car is at the door, madam.
It can wait, Mary, for 5 minutes.
Yes, sir.
Cecil, I hope I shall not offend you if I state quite frankly and openly that you seem to me to be in every way the visible personification of absolute perfection.
I think your frankness does you great credit, Erniste, and if you will allow me, I will copy your remarks into my diary.
Do you really keep a diary? I'd give anything to have a look at it. May I?
Oh no, it is merely a young man's record of his own thoughts and impressions and consequently meant for publication. I hope you will order a copy when it appears in volume form. But pray, Erniste, don't stop. I delight in taking down from dictating. I have reached absolute perfection. You can go on. I'm quite ready for more. Oh no, Erniste, don't cough. When one is dictating, one should speak fluently and not cough. Besides, I don't know how to spell a cough.
Cecil, ever since I first looked upon your wondrous and incomparable beauty, I have dared to love you wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly.
I don't think it can be right for you to tell me that you love me wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly. Hopelessly doesn't seem to make much sense, does it?
Cecil?
The car is waiting, madam.
Tell her to come around next week, at the same hour.
Yes, madam.
Auntie Jackie would be very much annoyed if she knew you were staying until next week, at the same hour.
Oh, I don't care about Jackie. I don't care about anyone in the whole world but you. I love you, Cecil. You will marry me, won't you?
You silly girl, of course. Well, we have been engaged for the last 3 months.
For the last 3 months?
Yes, it will be exactly 3 months on Thursday.
But how did we become engaged?
Well, ever since Auntie Jackie first confessed to me that she had a younger sister who was very wicked and bad, you, of course, have formed the chief topic of conversation between myself and Professor Prism. And of course, a woman who is much talked about is always very attractive. One feels there must be something in her after all. I dare say it was foolish of me, but I fell in love with you, Erniste.
Oh, darling, and when was the engagement actually settled?
On the 14th of February, worn out by your entire ignorance of my existence, I determined to end the matter one way or another. And after a long struggle with myself, I proposed to you under this dear old tree here. And the next day, I bought this signet ring in your name and this little trinket in the shape of a true lover's knot, and I promised I would always wear it.
Did I give you this? It's very fine, isn't it?
Yes, you've wonderfully good taste, Erniste. It's the excuse I give you for leading such a bad life. And this box here is where I keep all your dear letters.
My letters! But my own sweet Cecil, I have never written you any letters.
Oh, you need to hardly remind me of that, Erniste. I remember only too well I was forced to write your letters for you. I wrote always 3 times a week and sometimes oftener.
Oh, do let me read them, Cecil.
Oh no, they would make you far too conceited. The ones I wrote to you after I broke off the engagement are so beautiful and so badly spelled that even now I can hardly read them without sobbing a little.
But was our engagement ever broken off?
Yes, of course it was. On the 14th of February last. On the 22nd of March. You can read it in the entry if you like. Today, I decided to break off the engagement with Erniste. I feel it is better to do so. The weather still continues charming.
But why on earth was it broken off? What had I done? I'd done nothing at all. Cecil, I'm very much hurt indeed to hear you broke it off, particularly when the weather was so charming.
But it would hardly been a serious engagement if it hadn't been broken off at least once. Besides, I forgave you before the week was out.
What a perfect angel you are, Cecil.
You dear romantic girl. I hope your hair curls naturally. Does it?
Yes, yes, darling, with a little help from others.
I'm so glad.
You'll never break off our engagement again, Cecil.
Oh, I don't think I could now that I've actually met you. Besides, there is the question of your name.
Yes, of course.
You mustn't laugh at me, darling, but it has always been a boyish dream of mine to love someone whose name was Erniste. There is something in that name that seems to inspire one with absolute confidence. I pity any poor married man whose wife is not named Erniste.
But my dear child, do you mean to say you couldn't love me if I had some other name?
What name?
Oh, but any name you like. Adeline, for instance.
But I don't like Adeline.
Well, my dear, sweet, loving little darling, I really don't see why you should object to the name of Adeline. It is not at all a bad name. In fact, it is a rather aristocratic name. Half of the ladies in the bankruptcy court are called Adeline. But seriously, Cecil, if my name was Addie, couldn't you love me?
I might respect you. I might admire your character, Erniste. But I fear I should not be able to give you my undivided attention.
Cecil, your rector here is, I suppose, thoroughly experienced in the practice of all the rites and ceremonials of the church?
Oh yes, Dr. Chasuble is a most learnt woman. She has never written a single book, so you can imagine how much she knows.
I must see her at once on the most important christening. I mean, on the most important business.
Oh.
I shan't be away more than half an hour.
Considering we have been engaged since the 14th of February, and we have only met today for the first time, I think it is rather hard for you to leave me for so long a period as half an hour. Couldn't you make it 20 minutes?
I'll be back in no time.
What an impetuous girl she is. I love her hair so much. I must enter my proposal in my diary.
Mr. Fairfax has just called to see Miss Worthing on a very important business, Mr. Fairfax states.
Isn't Miss Worthing in her library?
Miss Worthing went over in the direction of the rectory some time ago.
Pray ask the gentleman to come out here. Miss Worthing is sure to be back soon. And you can bring tea.
Yes, sir.
Master Fairfax. I suppose one of the many good elderly men who are associated with Auntie Jackie in some of her philanthropic work. I don't quite like men who are interested in philanthropic work. I think it is so forward of them.
Mr. Fairfax.
Hey, let me introduce myself to you. My name is Cecil Cardew.
Cecil Cardew? What a very strong name. Something tells me we are going to be great friends. I like you already more than I can say, and my first impressions of people are never wrong.
How nice of you to like me so much after we have known each other for such a comparatively short time. Harry, sit down.
I may call you Cecil, may I not?
With pleasure.
And you will always call me Wendell, won't you?
If you wish.
Well, then that is all quite settled, is it not?
I hope so.
Perhaps this would be a favourable opportunity for my mentioning who I am. My father is Lord Bracknell. Have you heard of Papa?
I don't think so.
Nor Mamma either then, I suppose? Why, outside certain military circles, Mamma, I'm glad to say, is entirely unknown. I think that is quite as it should be. Today, war, it seems to me, to be the proper sphere for the female. Certainly once a woman begins to neglect her adversarial duties, she becomes painfully feminine, does she not? And I don't like that. It makes women so very attractive. Cecil, Papa, whose views on education are remarkably strict, has brought me up to be extremely short-sighted. It is part of his system. So would you mind my looking at you through my monocle?
Oh, not at all, Wendell. I am very fond of being looked at.
You are here for a short visit, I suppose.
Oh no, I live here.
Really? Your father, no doubt, or some other male relative of advanced years resides here also.
Oh no, I have no father, nor in fact any relations.
Indeed.
My dear guardian, with the assistance of Professor Prism, has the arduous task of looking after me.
Your guardian?
Yes, I am Miss Worthing's ward.
Oh, that's strange. She never mentioned to me that she had a ward. How secretive of her. She grows more interesting hourly. However, I cannot say that the news fills me with feelings of unmixed delight. I'm very fond of you, Cecil. I've liked you ever since I met you. However, I am bound to state, now that I know that you are Miss Worthing's ward, that I cannot help but express a wish that you were just a little older than you seem to be, and not quite so very attractive in appearance. In fact, if I may speak candidly...
I think that whenever anybody has anything unpleasant to say, one should always be quite candid.
Ah, well, then to speak with perfect candour, Master Cardew, I wish that you were fully 42 and more than usually plain for your age. Erniste has a strong, upright nature. She is the very soul of truth and honour. Disloyalty would be as impossible to her as deception. But even girls of the noblest moral character are extremely susceptible to the influence of the physical charms of others. Modern, no less than ancient history provides countless examples of what I refer to. Indeed, if it didn't, history would be quite unreadable.
I beg your pardon, Wendell. Did you say Erniste?
Oh, yes.
Oh, but it is not Miss Erniste Worthing who is my guardian. It is her sister, her elder sister.
Erniste never mentioned to me that she had a sister.
I'm sorry to say they have not been on good terms for a very long time.
Ah, well, that does account for it. In fact, now I think of it, I've never heard any woman mention their sister. The subject seems to be most distasteful. Cecil, you have lifted a load from my mind. I was growing almost anxious. It would have been terrible if any cloud could have come across a friendship as strong as ours, would it not? Of course, you are quite sure it is not Miss Erniste Worthing who is your guardian.
Quite sure. In fact, I'm going to be hers.
I beg your pardon?
Dearest Wendell, I don't see why I should make a secret of it to you. Our little county newspaper is sure to chronicle the facts next week. Miss Erniste Worthing and I are engaged to be married.
My dear Cecil, I fear there must be some slight error. For Miss Erniste Worthing proposed to me yesterday afternoon at 5:30, if you'd care to verify the incident. I never travel without my diary. One must always have something sensational to read on the train. I'm very sorry, dear Cecil, but it would appear that I have the prior claim.
It would distress me more than I could tell you, dearest Wendell, if it caused you any physical or mental anguish. But I feel bound to tell you that since Erniste proposed to you, just clearly changed her mind.
Well, if the poor girl has been entrapped into any foolish promise, well, I should suggest that it were my duty to rescue her at once, and with a firm hand.
Whatever unfortunate entanglement my darling may have got herself into, I will never reproach her with it after we are married.
Do you allude to me, Master Cardew, as an entanglement? Oh, you are presumptuous. On an occasion such as this, it becomes more than a moral duty to speak one's mind. It becomes a pleasure.
Do you suggest, Master Fairfax, that I entrapped Erniste into an engagement? How dare you? This is no time for wearing this shallow mask of manners. When I see a spade, I call it a spade.
Well, I am very glad to say that I have never seen a spade, or indeed a shovel. It is obvious our social circles have been widely different.
Shall I lay tea here as usual?
Yes, as usual.
Are there any interesting walks in the vicinity, Master Cardew?
Oh yes, a great many. From the top of one of the hills quite close, one can see 5 counties.
5 counties? I don't think I'd like that. I hate crowds.
I suppose that is why you live in town.
Quite a well-kept garden, Master Cardew.
So glad you like it, Master Fairfax.
Well, I had no idea there were any flowers in the country.
Oh, flowers here are as common as people are in London.
Personally, I cannot understand how anybody manages to exist in the country. That is, if anyone who is anyone does. The country always bores me to death.
Ah, this is what the newspaper call agricultural depression, is it not? I believe the aristocracy are suffering from it at the very present moment. There's almost an epidemic amongst them. May I offer you some tea, Master Fairfax?
Thank you. Detestable boy. But I require tea.
Sugar?
Oh, no, thank you. Sugar isn't fashionable anymore.
Cake or bread and butter?
Bread and butter, please. Cake is rarely seen at the best households nowadays. You have filled my tea with lumps of sugar, and though I most distinctly asked you for bread and butter, you have given me cake. I am known for the gentleness of my nature and the sweetness of my disposition, but I warn you, Master Cardew, you may go too far.
To save my poor, innocent, trusting darling from the machinations of any other man, there are no lengths to which I would not go.
Oh, from the moment I saw you, I distrusted you. I felt that you were false and deceitful, and my first impressions of people are invariably right.
It seems to me, Master Fairfax, that I am trespassing on your valuable time. No doubt you have many other calls of a similar character to make in the neighbourhood.
Erniste! My own Erniste!
Wendell, darling!
A moment. May I ask, are you engaged to be married to this young man?
To dear little Cecil? Of course not. What could have put such an idea into your pretty little head?
Thank you. Oh, you may.
I knew there must have been some misunderstanding, Master Fairfax. The lady whose hand you're currently holding is my guardian, Miss Jacqueline Worthing.
I beg your pardon?
This is Auntie Jackie.
Jackie! Oh!
Here is Erniste.
My own love.
A moment. May I ask you, Erniste, are you engaged to be married to this young man?
To what young man? Good heavens, Wendell!
Yes, to good heavens, Wendell. I mean to Wendell.
Of course not. What could have put such an idea into your pretty little head?
Thank you. You may.
I did feel there must have been some slight error, Master Cardew. The woman who is currently embracing you is my cousin, Miss Adeline Moncrief.
Adeline Moncrief? Oh. Are you called Adeline?
I cannot deny it.
Is your name really Jackie?
I could deny it if I liked. I could deny anything if I liked. But my name certainly is Jackie. It's been Jacqueline for years.
A gross deception has been practiced on both of us.
Oh, my poor wounded Cecil.
My brave, wronged Wendell.
You will always call me brother, won't you?
There is only one question I would like to be allowed to ask my guardian.
An admirable idea. Miss Worthing, there is just one question I would wish to be permitted to put to you. Where is your sister, Erniste? We are both engaged to be married to your sister, Erniste, so it is a matter of some importance to know where your sister Erniste is at present.
Wendell, Cecil, it pains me very much to have to speak the truth. Indeed, it is the first time in my life that I've ever been reduced to such a painful position, and I am really quite inexperienced in doing anything of the kind. However, I will tell you quite frankly that I have no sister, Erniste. I have no sister at all. Indeed, I never had a sister, and I don't intend to have a sister in the future.
No sister at all?
None.
Had you never a sister of any kind?
Never, not even of any kind.
I'm very sorry, dear Cecil, but it would appear neither of us is engaged to be married to anyone.
It's not a very pleasant position for a young lad to find himself in, is it?
Let us go into the house. They shan't dare venture to follow us in there.
No, women are so cowardly, aren't they?
This ghastly state of affairs is what you call Bunburying, I suppose.
Yes, and a perfectly wonderful Bunbury it is. The most wonderful Bunbury I've ever had in my life.
Well, you have no right whatsoever to Bunbury here.
Oh, that is absurd. One has a right to Bunbury anywhere one chooses. Every serious Bunburist knows that.
Serious Bunburyist. Good heavens.
Well, one must be serious about something if one wants to have any amusement in life. I happen to be serious about Bunburying. What on earth you are serious about, I haven't got the remotest idea. About everything, I should fancy. You have such an absolutely trivial nature.
Well, the one small satisfaction I get out of this whole wretched business is that your friend Bunbury's quite exploded. You won't be able to run down to the country quite so often as you used to, dear Addie, and a very good thing too.
Your sister is a little off colour, isn't she, dear Jackie? You won't be able to disappear to London quite so frequently as your wicked custom was, and not a bad thing either.
As for your conduct towards dear Cecil, I must say that I think you're taking in a sweet, simple, innocent boy like that quite inexcusable, to say nothing of the fact that he is my ward.
I can find no possible defence for your deceiving a brilliant, clever, thoroughly experienced young man like dear Wendell, to say nothing of the fact that he's my cousin.
I'm in love with Wendell. I want to marry him, that's all.
I'm in love with Cecil. I simply want to be engaged to him.
Well, there's no chance of your marrying Cecil.
I don't think there's much likelihood, Jackie, of you and Wendell being united.
Well, that's no business of yours.
If it was my business, I wouldn't talk about it. It is very vulgar to talk about one's business. Only people like stockbrokers do that, and then merely at dinner parties.
How you can sit there calmly eating muffins when we are in this horrible trouble, I can't quite make out. You seem to me to be perfectly heartless.
I can't eat muffins in an agitated manner. The butter would probably fall on my boa. One should always eat muffins quite calmly. It is the only way to eat them.
I say it is perfectly heartless you're eating muffins at all under the circumstances.
When I am in trouble, eating is the only thing that consoles me. Indeed, when I am in great trouble, as anybody who knows me intimately will tell you, I refuse everything except food and drink. At the present moment, I am eating muffins because I am unhappy.
Well,
besides, I'm perfectly fond of muffins.
That's no reason for you to eat them in such a greedy way.
I wish you would have tea cake instead. I hate tea cake.
Good heavens! I suppose a woman might eat her own muffins in her own garden.
Well, you have just said it's perfectly heartless to eat muffins.
I said it's perfectly heartless of your eating muffins. It's quite a different thing.
That may be, but muffins are the same.
Oh, and you wish to goodness you would go.
You can't possibly ask me to go without having some dinner. I never go without my dinner. Nobody ever does, except vegetarians and people like that. Besides, I have just made arrangements with Dr. Chasuble to be christened at 5:45 under the name of Erniste.
My dear, the sooner you give up that nonsense, the better. I made arrangements myself with Dr. Chasuble this morning to be christened at 5:30 this afternoon, and I will naturally be taking the name of Erniste. Wendell would wish it. Besides, we can't both be christened Erniste, it's absurd. And I have every right, if I like, to be christened, as there's no probable evidence that I've ever been christened before by anybody else, and I think it's probably likely that I never was. Dr. Chasuble agrees. It is entirely different in your case, however. You have been christened already.
Yes, but I have not been christened for years.
But you have been christened, that's the important point.
Quite so. So I know my constitution can stand it. If you're not sure about your ever having been christened, I dare say I think it rather dangerous you're venturing on it now. It might make you very unwell. You could hardly have forgotten that someone very closely connected to you was very nearly carried off in Paris this week by a severe chill.
But you yourself said a severe chill was not hereditary.
It used to be, I know, but I dare say it is now. Science is always making wonderful improvements in things.
Oh, that's nonsense. You're always talking nonsense.
Jackie, you're at the muffins again. I wish you wouldn't. There are only 2 left. I told you I was particularly fond of muffins.
But I hate tea cake.
Why then do you allow tea cake to be served up to your guests? What ideas you have of hospitality.
Adeline, I've already told you that I don't want you here. Why don't you go?
I haven't finished my tea yet! And there's still 1 muffin left.
The fact they have not followed us into the house, as anyone else would have done, seems to suggest they have some sense of shame left.
They have been eating muffins. That looks like repentance.
They don't seem to notice us at all. Couldn't you cough?
But I don't have a cough.
Oh, they're looking at us. What effrontery.
They're approaching. That's very forward of them.
Let us preserve a dignified silence.
Certainly. Anything to do now?
Ne pas jamais ôter ses côtés.
C'est bien pénible en vérité.
Dormir après des longues trottées.
Vivre si la félicité.
Sentir la violette des parmes.
Vous me comblez en moussongeant.
This dignified silence seems to produce a most unpleasant effect.
Most distasteful one.
But we will not be the first to break it.
Certainly not.
Oh, Miss Worthing, there is something very important I need to ask you. Much depends on your reply.
Wendell, your common sense is invaluable. Miss Moncrief, kindly answer the following question. Why did you pretend to be my guardian sister?
In order that I might have an opportunity of meeting you.
That certainly seems a satisfactory answer, does it not?
Oh, well, yes, friend, if you can believe her.
I don't, but it doesn't affect the wonderful beauty of our answer.
True. In matters of grave importance, style, not sincerity, is the vital thing. Miss Worthing, what explanation can you offer me for pretending to have a sister? Was it so you may have an opportunity to come up to town and see me as often as you can?
Can you doubt it, Wendell?
Oh, I have the gravest doubts upon the subject, but I intend to crush them. This is not the time for German scepticism. Their explanations do appear to be quite satisfactory, especially Miss Worthing's. That has the stamp of truth on it.
I am more than content with what Miss Moncrief said. Her voice alone inspires one with absolute credulity.
Then do you think we should forgive them?
Yes. I mean, no.
True. I quite forgot. There are principles at stake that cannot be surrendered. Which of us should tell them? The task is not a pleasant one.
Could we not both speak at the same time?
Oh, an excellent idea. I nearly always speak at the same time as other people. Will you take time from me?
Certainly.
Your Christian names are still...
An insuperable barrier. That is all.
Our Christian names? But we
are going to be christened this afternoon.
For my sake, you are willing to do this terrible thing?
I am.
Please, me? You're ready to face this fearful ordeal?
I am.
How absurd to talk of the equality of the sexes. In questions of self-sacrifice, women are far beyond us.
We are.
They have moments of physical courage of which we men know absolutely nothing.
Oh, darling.
Darling.
Lord Bracknell.
Good heavens!
Wendell, what does this mean?
Merely that I'm engaged to be married to Miss Worthing, Papa.
Come here. Sit down. Sit down immediately. Hesitation of any kind is a sign of mental decay in the young and weakness in the old. Apprise, madam, of my son's sudden flight by his trusting manservant, whose confidence I purchased by means of a small coin. I followed him here at once by luggage train. His unhappy mother is, I am glad to say, under the impression that he is attending a more than lengthy lecture by the University Extension Scheme on the permanent income of thought. I do not propose to undeceive her. Indeed, I have never undeceived her at all. I would consider it wrong. However, you must understand that all communication between yourself and my son must cease at once. On this point, as indeed on all points, I am firm.
I am engaged to be married to Wendell, Lord Bracknell.
You are nothing of the kind, madam. And now, in regards, Adeline. Adeline?
Yes, Uncle August.
Might I inquire if this is indeed the house of your invalid friend, Miss Bunbury?
Oh, no, Bunbury doesn't live here. Bunbury is somewhere else at present. In fact, Bunbury's dead.
Dead? When did she die? Her death must have been extremely sudden.
Oh, I killed Bunbury this afternoon. I mean, poor Bunbury died this afternoon.
What did Miss Bunbury die of?
Bunbury? She was quite exploded.
Exploded? Was she victim to a revolutionary outrage? I had no idea that Miss Bunbury was interested in social legislation. If so, she is well punished for her morbidity.
My dear Uncle August, I mean, she was found out. The doctors found out that Bunbury could not live. That is what I mean. So Bunbury died.
She seems to have the greatest opinion in her physicians. However, I am glad that she has decided to take a definitive course of action and act under proper medical advice. And now that we have gotten rid of Miss Bunbury, may I ask you, Miss Worthing, who is this young person that my niece Adeline is holding in what seems to me a somewhat unnecessary manner?
That gentleman is Master Cecil Cardew, my ward.
I'm engaged to be married to Cecil, Uncle August.
I beg your pardon?
Miss Moncrief and I are engaged to be married, Lord Bracknell.
I don't know if there's anything particularly exciting in the air in this part of Hertfordshire. The number of engagements that seem to go on seem to be well above the average that statistics have laid down for our guidance. I feel a preliminary inquiry on my part would not be out of place. Miss Worthing, might I inquire if Master Cardew here is related to any of the larger railway stations of London? I merely desired information. As of yesterday, I had no idea there were any families whose origins were at terminus.
Master Cecil Cardew is the grandson of the late Mrs. Tamsin Cardew of 149 Belgrave Square, Southwest, Gervais Park, Dorking, Surrey, and the Sporran, Fifeshire, NB.
That answer is not unsatisfactory. 3 addresses always inspire confidence, even in tradesmen. But what proof have I of their authenticity?
I have carefully preserved the court guides of the period. They are open to your inspection, Lord Bracknell.
I have known strange errors in that publication.
Well, Cecil's family solicitors are Messrs. Markby, and Markby.
Markby, and Markby? Oh, a firm of the very highest position in their profession. Well, indeed, I'm told that one of the Markbys is occasionally seen to dinner parties. So far, I am satisfied.
That is extremely kind of you, Lord Bracknell. You will also be pleased to hear that I have in my possession certificates of Cecil's birth, baptism, whooping cough, registration, vaccination, confirmation, and the measles, both the German and the English variety.
Ah, life crowded with incident, I see. Though perhaps somewhat too exciting for a young man. I myself am in no favour of premature experiences. Oh, Wendell, the time fast approaches for our departure. We have not a moment to lose. As a matter of form, Miss Worthing, I suppose I'd better ask if Master Cardew has any little fortune.
Oh, about £730,000 in the funds. That is all. Goodbye, Lord Bracknell. So pleased to see you.
A moment, Miss Worthing. A moment, please. £730,000? And in the funds? Why, Master Cardew seems to me to be the most attractive young man now that I look at him. Very few young men of the present day have any real qualities that last, and any that improve with time. We live, I regret to say, in an age of services. Come over here, my boy. Oh, what a dear boy. Your suit is sadly simple, and your haircut is almost as if nature had left it. But we can soon alter that. A thoroughly experienced gentleman's gentleman produces a very good result in a very brief space of time. Why, I recall recommending one to Lord Lancing, and after 3 months, his own wife didn't know him.
And after 6 months, nobody knew him.
Kindly turn your head, my boy. No, the side view is what I want. Yes, quite as I expected. There are distinct social possibilities in your profile. The two weak points in our age, of course, are its want of principle and its want of profile. The chin a little higher, my boy. Style largely depends on the way the chin is worn. They are worn just at present. Adeline?
Yes, Uncle August.
There are distinct social possibilities in Master Cardew's profile.
Cecil is the sweetest, charming, most dearest young man in the whole world, and I don't care twopence about social possibilities.
Never speak so disrespectfully of society, Adeline. Only people that can't get into it do that. Dear boy, as I'm sure you know, Adeline has really nothing but her debts to depend upon. But I myself am not in favour of mercenary marriages. Why, when I became engaged to Lady Bracknell, I had no fortune of any kind. But I did not dare imagine that standing in my way. Well, I suppose I must give my consent.
Thank you, Uncle August.
Cecil, you may shake hands.
Thank you, Lord Bracknell.
You may also address me as Uncle August for the future.
Thank you, Uncle August.
The marriage, I feel, had better take place quite soon.
Thank you, Uncle August.
Thank you, Uncle August.
To speak frankly, I am not in favour of long engagements. They give each other the opportunity to find out each other's characters before marriage, which I think is never advisable.
Pray, excuse me for interrupting you, Lord Bracknell, but this engagement is quite out of the question. I am Cecil's guardian, and he cannot marry without my consent, and that consent I absolutely decline to give.
Upon what grounds, may I ask? Adeline is extremely, I may say, ostentatiously eligible young lady. She has nothing but looks everything. What more could one desire?
It pains me very much to have to speak the truth to you, Lord Bracknell, about your niece, but I'm afraid I do not approve at all of her moral character. I suspect her of being untruthful.
Untruthful? My niece? Impossible. She is an Oxonian.
I fear there can be no possible doubt upon the matter. This afternoon, during my temporary absence in London upon an important question of romance, she obtained admission to my house by means of the false pretense of being my sister. Under an assumed name, she drank, I've just been informed by my butler, an entire bottle of my Perrier Jouet Brut 89, wine I was specially reserving for myself. Under an assumed name, she succeeded in the course of the afternoon of alienating the affections of my only ward. She subsequently stayed to tea and devoured every single muffin, and what makes her conduct all the more heartless is that she was perfectly well aware from the first that I have no sister, that I never had a sister, and that I do not intend to have a sister, not even of any kind. I distinctly told her so myself yesterday afternoon.
Yes, well, Miss Worthing, after careful consideration, I have decided to entirely overlook my niece's conduct to you.
That is very generous of you, Lord Bracknell, but my own decision, however, is unalterable. I decline to give my consent.
Come over here, my boy. How old are you, boy?
Well, I am only 18, but I always admit to 21 when I go to parties.
You are right to make some slight alteration. Indeed, no man should ever be quite so honest about their age. It looks so calculating. 18, but admitting to 20 at even parties. Well, it will not be long before you are of age and free from the restraints of tutelage. So I don't think that your guardian's consent is at all any importance.
Pray excuse me for interrupting you again, Lord Bracknell, but it is only fair to tell you that according to the terms of Cecil's grandmother's will, he does not legally come of age until he is 35.
Well, that does not seem to me to be of any grave objection. Well, 35 is a very attractive age. London is full of men of the highest birth who have, for the most part, remained 35 for years. Lord Dumbledon is an instance in point. To my own recollection now, he has remained at the age of 35 ever since he arrived at the age of 40, which was many years ago now. I see no reason why our dear Cecil should not still be more attractive at the age you just mentioned. There will be a large accumulation of property.
Addy, could you wait for me till I was 35?
Of course I could, Cecil. You know I could.
Yes, I felt it instinctively, but I couldn't wait all that time. I hate waiting even 5 minutes for anybody. It always makes me rather cross. I'm not punctual myself, I know, but I do like punctuality in others. And waiting to be married is quite out of the question.
Then what is to be done, Cecil?
I don't know, Miss Moncrief.
Miss Worthing, as Cecil positively states that he cannot wait until the age of 35, a remark which, I am bound to tell you, seems to demonstrate a somewhat impatient nature, I would beg you to reconsider your decision.
But my dear Lord Bracknell, the matter is entirely in your own hands. The moment you consent to my marriage to Wendell, I will most gladly allow your niece to form an alliance with my ward.
You must be well aware that what you propose is quite out of the question.
Then a passionate celibacy is all that any of us can look forward to.
That is not the destiny that I propose for Wendell. Adeline, of course, could choose for herself. Oh, Wendell, we really must depart. We've missed 5, if not 6 trains already. To miss any more might expose us to comment on the platform.
Everything is quite ready for the christenings.
Christenings, madam? Is that not somewhat premature?
Both these ladies have expressed a desire for immediate baptism.
At their age? The idea is grotesque and irreligious. Adeline, I forbid you from being baptized. I will not hear of such excesses. Your dear aunt will be most disappointed if she realized that this was the way you wasted your time and money.
Am I to understand then that there are to be no christenings at all this afternoon?
I don't think that, as things are now, they would be of much practical use to either of us, Dr. Chasuble.
I am grieved to hear such sentiments from you, Miss Worthing. They savour of the heretical views of the Anabaptists, views that I have completely refuted in 4 of my unpublished sermons. However, as your present mood seems to be one peculiarly secular, I will return to church at once. Indeed, I have just been informed by the pew opener that for the last hour and a half, Professor Prism has been waiting for me in the vestry.
Professor Prism? Did I hear you mention Professor Prism?
Yes, Lord Bracknell, I am on my way to join him.
A moment, madam, please, a moment. This matter may prove to be one of vital importance to Lady Bracknell and myself. Is this Professor Prism a male of repellent aspect, remotely connected with education?
He is the most cultivated of gentlemen and the very picture of respectability.
It is obviously the same person. May I ask what position he holds in your household?
I am a celibate, sir.
Professor Prism, Lord Bracknell, has been for the last 3 years Cecil's esteemed tutor and valued companion.
In spite of what I hear about him, I must see him at once. Let him be sent for.
Oh, he approaches. He is nigh.
I was told you expected me in the vestry, dear doctor. I have been waiting for you there for an hour and 3/4.
Prism! Come here, Prism! Prism, where is that baby? 28 years ago, Prism, you left Lady Bracknell's house, number 104, Upper Grosvenor Square, in charge of a perambulator containing a baby of the female sex. You never returned. A few days later, through an elaborate investigation by the Metropolitan Police, the perambulator was discovered at midnight in a remote corner of Bayswater. Contained within the perambulator was a 3-volume novel of unusually revolting sentimentality. But the baby was not there. Prism, where is that baby?
Lord Bracknell, I admit with shame that I do not know. I only wish I did. The plain facts of the case are these. On the morning of the day you mention, a day which is forever branded on my memory, I prepared as usual to take the baby out in its perambulator. I also had with me a somewhat old but capacious handbag into which I had intended to place the manuscript of a work of fiction which I had written in my few unoccupied hours. In a moment of mental abstraction, for which I can never forgive myself, I deposited the manuscript in the bassinet and placed the baby in the handbag.
But where did you deposit the handbag?
Do not ask, Miss Worthing.
Professor Prism, this is a matter of no small importance to me. I insist on knowing where you deposited the handbag that contained that infant.
I left it in the cloakroom of one of the larger railway stations in London.
What railway station?
Victoria, the Brighton line.
I must retire to my rooms for a moment. Wendell, wait here for me.
Well, if you're not too long, I'll wait for you my whole life.
What do you think this means, Lord Bracknell?
I dare not even suspect, Dr. Chasuble. I need hardly remind you that in families of very high status, strange coincidences are not supposed to occur. In fact, they are rarely considered a thing.
Auntie Jackie seems strangely agitated.
Ooh, your guardian has a very emotional nature.
The noise is extremely unpleasant. It sounds as if she was having an argument. I dislike arguments of any kind. They're always vulgar and often convincing.
Oh, you have to stop now.
Yeah, I wish you would arrive at some conclusion.
The suspense is terrible. I hope it will last.
Professor Prism, is this the handbag? Examine it carefully before you speak. The happiness of more than one life depends on your answer.
It seems to be mine. Yes, here is the injury it received from the upsetting of a Gower Street omnibus in younger and happier days. And here on the lining is the stain caused by the explosion of a temperance beverage, an incident which occurred in Leamington. And here, on the lock, are my initials. I had forgotten that in an extravagant mood I had had them placed there. The bag is undoubtedly mine. I am delighted to have it so unexpectedly restored to me. It has been a great inconvenience being without it all these years.
Professor Prism, more is restored to you than this handbag. I was the baby you placed in it.
You?
Yes! Father!
Oh, Miss Worthing, I am unmarried.
Unmarried. I do not deny that that is a blow, but after all, who has the right to cast a stone against one who has suffered? Cannot repentance wipe out an act of folly? Why should there be one law for women and another for men? Father, I forgive you.
Miss Worthing, there is some error. There is the gentleman who can tell you who you really are.
Lord Bracknell, I hate to seem inquisitive, but would you kindly inform me who I am?
I'm afraid that the news I have to give you will not altogether please you. You are the daughter of my poor brother-in-law, Mr. Moncrief, and consequently, Adeline's elder sister.
Addie's elder sister. And I have a sister after all. I always knew I had a sister. Cecil, how could you ever have doubted that I had a sister? Oh, Dr. Chasuble, my unfortunate sister. Professor Prism, my unfortunate sister. Wendell, my unfortunate sister. Addie, you young tearaway, you better treat me with more respect in the future. You have never behaved to me like a sister in all your life.
Well, not till today, old girl, I admit. I did my best, however, though I was out of practice.
Oh, my own one. But what one are you? What is your Christian name?
Good heavens, I had quite forgotten that point. Your decision upon my name is irrevocable, I suppose.
Well, I never change, except in my affections.
What a noble nature you have, Wendell.
Then the question better be settled at once. Uncle August, a moment. When I was left in the handbag, had I been christened already?
Every luxury that money could afford, including christenings, were lavished upon you by your fond and doting parents.
Then I was christened. That's settled then. Now, what name was I given? Let me know the worst.
Being the eldest daughter, you would naturally have been christened after your mother.
Yes, but what was my mother's Christian name?
I cannot at the present recall what the lady's Christian name was, but I had no doubt that she had one. She had a somewhat eccentric nature, but that was due to the fighting and all the depression and the indigestion and the marriage and other things of the kind.
Addie, can you recollect what our mother's Christian name was?
My dear, we were never even on speaking terms. She died before I was a year old, but she was a general.
Then her name would appear in the army lists of the period, I suppose, Uncle August.
Well, the general was essentially a woman of peace, except in her domestic life. but I have no doubt that her names would appear in the military directory.
The army lists of the last 40 years are here. These delightful records should have been my constant study. Generals. Malum, Maxbum, Magley, oh, what ghastly names they have. Markby, Migsby, Mobbs, Moncrief, Lieutenant, 1980, Captain, Lieutenant Colonel, Colonel, General, 1990, Christian names. Erniste Jacqueline. I always told you, Wendell, my name was Erniste, didn't I? Well, it is Erniste. I mean, it naturally is Erniste.
Yes, I remember now. The general was called Erniste. I knew I had a particular reason for disliking the name.
Erniste! My own Erniste! I felt from the first that you could not possibly have any other name.
Wendell, it is a terrible thing for a woman to discover that all her life she has been speaking nothing but the truth. Can you forgive me?
I can, for I feel that you are sure to change.
My own one.
Felix.
Gertrude, at last.
Cecil, at last.
Wendell, at last.
My niece, you appear to be showing signs of triviality.
On the contrary, Uncle August, I have just realized, the first time in my life, the vital importance of being earnest.